We had them performing at so many of our functions, especially our Summer Jazz Festival at Crossroads Mall. Every year they would be our closing act. They would draw one of the biggest crowds. So we knew that if we had them closing down the event, that they would draw one of the biggest crowds of that particular year's events, so to speak. Somebody had sent me a copy of their first album, Two Guitars, One Passion, back in 1991, early 92, and I began to play it on my show. They had a word on there that I'd never heard of. It was called, they had a name on there called Flaz, which is a combination of flamenco jazz put together. So it was a play on words, so to speak, but they did a wonderful job with the album overall, and I was able to feature a couple of songs from the album on my show. It became very, very popular. The album produced a song called La Piquina, which today is still one of the standards of Lara Reyes performing as a duo. Well, when they made a splash back in the early 90s, it was primarily as a flamenco jazz duo. They would do so many things, whether it be flamenco, Mexican standards onto some smooth jazz standards. I know that they covered a couple of Spyro Gyra songs also. But in terms of their contribution, they made such a huge impact back in the early and mid-90s and even into the latter part of the 90s before they went their own separate ways. The impact that they've had locally and also throughout the entire state of Texas, in my opinion, has been one that was not seen from that type of music. We do know of a lot of Mexican artists and, of course, Tejano artists, but their style of music was called flamenco jazz, and the impact that they made was that we hadn't had a band or a duo performing that style of music to make the impact that they made. So much so that they ended up getting a 5-record deal with a major record label on the West Coast, Higher Octave Records. And the album that they released in 1991 was re-released as one of their albums that they had that 5-record deal with. And the contribution they made was such that they became so very, very widely popular here in San Antonio that word spread out through the entire Southwest. They had several gigs performing out in California, from what I understand. You know, every year that we had them performing at some of our functions, they would always draw one of the largest crowds at whatever event it was, whether it be a club date, whether it be at one of our jazz festivals. We knew that they were going to draw very, very well. So the impact was such that they did very, very well as a duo. They obviously sold a lot of records for themselves and for the record company for whom they had the record deal with at the time. The only time that I've ever heard Sergio perform as a solo act was when he released a solo album a couple of years ago. And I know him to be strictly a flamenco jazz guitarist, but I'm sure he has the capability of playing all sorts of other type of guitar music as well.